Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Land Development Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Glick. And if this is your first time joining us, our show is dedicated to talking with individuals associated with the land development industry, hearing about their origin story, and then digging into some of the projects that they've been involved in. And today I'm excited to have with me Kegan Cunningham, who is a real estate broker at Zann Commercial Brokerage. Kegan, thanks for joining me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And where I want to start today is kind of where we start in all these episodes is digging into some of your background. And I think the first area is, really related to real estate and understanding like how did you first get into real estate and why real estate?
Sure. No, sure. Yeah. So I was studying at UT. I was studying communications. So didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do after school. I knew I could talk to people and interact with them. And my cousin happens to be the lead broker at Zann Commercial, Jason Kieschnick. And I talked to him one day, and I think I was a junior in college, and asked him, what do you do? And kind of started figuring out what he's doing. And I sell commercial real estate. And at the time, real estate in my mind was like, houses and, the simple stuff. Your mom, sells her house, that type of deal. And so I didn't really know the full extent of what this world was, the commercial side. And I wanted to get some experience outside of his firm. And so, I got an internship with a company in Houston and started working for them on the land side specifically. And man, it just fell in love with it. And I learned a lot. Initially, I didn't understand. I was like, why are people buying land? What are they doing with it? Like, what's so integral about it? But then, it's a dumb question I was asking when I'm, 19, 20 years old, when I started as an intern for them. But, every deal starts with the land. So, my brain just didn't process that. And so throughout my time working in the industry, I realized, wow, this is a bigger deal than I'd selling land. I'm thinking farm and ranch, but so much more than that.
Yeah, and so I imagine going into a company where your cousin is kind of the head broker of the company, having him to be able to I guess as a mentor and learn kind of some of the the insides of the industry and everything. What did that process look like? How did you leverage his knowledge?
So initially, when I worked at the first firm I was at, they had a land team, and that's all they did was land. So from that experience, I started out doing kind of the grunt work. So I was putting together presentations for landowners, making phone calls here and there to landowners, but sending letters. I mean, that was a big part of my job. I was almost like an administrative person. I was drafting letters and sending them to landowners in the areas we were targeting. And then, we'd get calls in on them, and then we'd prepare what's called a BPO. So through that BPO, broker's pricing opinion, you kind of learn land value, uses, what a piece of land is its highest and best use is, who the target customers would be. And, that's more on the listing side of things, as far as the traditional brokerage route. And that's kind of where they were teaching me early on, is that listing side. Kind of, I mean, obviously there's a million ways to do real estate. And personally, I'm not huge heavy on the listing side. I'm a little heavier on the buying side. But initially, the way I learned it from the company I was with guys with, tons of experience, kind of showed me the ins and outs of how you navigate talking to these owners. I mean, because you got owners from, it's every type of person in the world, age. um, you know, you're getting to know them and understand where their pain points are, and figure out, are they really a seller? I mean, that's the biggest thing I can tell people about. The biggest thing to learn is how to read people and understand, like, is there a deal to be made here, or are you just like push it? You don't want to push somebody to sell their land. That's not the idea. You're trying to present them an opportunity that, in most cases, is a win-win situation where they've owned the land for a really long time, and they're going to cash out. And so that's the knowledge I learned from Caldwell. And then when I left Caldwell and went to Zann, Jason's really mentored me more one-on-one level, me being his cousin as well. He's not specific to the land side. He does all asset types of real estate. And I came on kind of as our land expert for Zann, and have remained just continuing to just primarily do land transactions. But I mean, transactionally, I don't know anyone better than Jason. I mean, he's the contract side of things. I mean, any questions I have had and still have, he's always there to answer them for me. And so he's taught me that contract transactional side. And I was also kind of thrown in the fire because there really wasn't a massive land presence at Zann. And so I kind of just had to go start figuring it out on my own when I left Caldwell. And, I had to go create those relationships. And literally, first day I started at Zann, I was sitting in the office, pulled up my map, clicked on a parcel, called the guy, it was actually a lady I called. And literally, the first phone call I ever made, we ended up closing that deal. And so it was funny because, a lot of people, it did take about, the average time a land deal takes 9 months to close it. So it wasn't instantaneous success by any stretch of the imagination, but just the clicking, finding the contact the landowner, calling them resulted in a transaction. And that literally sparked my interest. And I'm like, this is something that I need to continue to chase after, because this way of doing business I like a
Yeah.
lot. When you're reaching out, you're cold calling. I mean, there's nothing you can do with your time in this business that's going to generate a higher return on your time than calling people all day
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those relationships a little bit, because
Yeah,
I imagine as you're on the, if you're on the, selling side or even on the listing side,
right.
um, managing and developing a relationship with whoever the prospective buyer or seller is something that's very important. I guess how do you lean into that and make sure that you are, developing that positive relationship and not coming across like,
Yeah.
pushing a deal on someone.
Oh, certainly. It's a really challenge. It's probably the most challenging part of it is when you're talking to people. You have to understand, the ownership, right? So you have to understand: did they inherit this property? Did they buy this property recently? Is this property owned by multiple people? You have to kind of understand the high level components to then, understand this landowner and hopefully make a deal happen. And so building that relationship is, asking the right questions, being genuine and really trying to understand not just their property, but them as a person. It's really comes back to straight up, human psychology, communication, and understanding that person and kind of the way they do things. And, asking the questions about their property and understanding like timelines is a huge thing for people, because in the commercial space, the average seller who sells a house is going to think, hey, this is going to close in 30 days. But when we're talking about single family, I mean, pretty much any commercial development type, the timelines are crazy long. And so to kind of set that stage early for these landowners, that's extremely important. But building that relationship early on and, keeping in touch with them, presenting an offer to them, calling them, don't text them all the time and just send them emails. You want to talk to them and understand, what they're trying to achieve. And then, you present these offers to them. So I love it because in my mind, we're not like selling a product to anyone. Truthfully, what we're doing is we're rolling in and offering these people large sums of money for their property. So like when you're making a call, it's not like you're making a sales call. It's like someone's
Right.
calling you saying, hey, you want 5 million bucks? I mean, that's literally the fun part about it. And people still, surprisingly tell you to, no,
No.
and
Yeah.
call me back, which is crazy. For most of us, we don't comprehend that because that's, some of these people have or own these properties forever and they have a lot of money, and you may not know who you're talking to initially. And, doing some back end research can really help, doing some back end research on them can really help you not run into those issues where you're, making an offer to someone who's a billionaire. You got
Right.
to really know what you're doing going into it. But yeah, those relationships are extremely important. And, staying honest with the people, not promising numbers that you can't, your client can't bring, not promising unrealistic timelines. That's how you continue a relationship, because some people will own, hundreds of parcels of land, and, you lie to them once, or you mess a deal up for them and you're not honest. I mean, you're out the door. So those
Yeah.
relationships are integral. I mean, it's 100% the most important part in probably any business, but this business especially.
Yeah, and I imagine it's a small community too of people in the industry. So
Certainly.
the minute that you do something that's not on the up and up, others are going to hear about it, and it's going to probably push you out of quite a few more deals in the future.
Well, in those local markets, word spreads like wildfire too. So, you mess around with a landowner and you're not honest with them and you upset them. Every landowner in the county is going to probably know. And
Right. Right.
don't talk to that guy. He's a snake oil salesman, or, so being honest with them and not being so salesy. Like, you go in there and you talk to them like, you're presenting them an opportunity, and, vetting the day one. You're also, when you have when you're bringing a buyer to the table, to buy their property, you explain to them who that buyer is, and you send them information on that buyer. You build that credibility up. It also helps to have good buyers. I'd say that's a pretty important part too, because having a bad buyer in a deal will not only, lose you the deal, but it'll make you look bad.
Yeah.
So having good buyers is probably the most important part of this off-market land acquisition world that I operate in.
So let's shift gears a little bit to Zann. So for
Yep.
people who are not familiar with Zann, how would you describe what Zann does?
Zann would be, I mean, a full service brokerage. We're located in Clear Lake, Texas, and we essentially, cover every aspect of the real estate business brokerage wise. So we're a full service brokerage company, and so that's, leasing, sales. We do everything from industrial to raw land. I mean, we kind of cover that Clear Lake market. That's the niche that the company holds. And then my niche is the off market land side, where I'm in multiple cities in the state. So I'm the only one in our group doing that. But the remainder, we have a massive presence in South Houston, in the Clear Lake market. Longstanding name. We do a lot of business down there. I don't necessarily do all that much business down there, but our company, Zann, that's exactly what they do. And they've done for the past, I think, 30 years,
Okay, nice.
30, 40 years.
Nice. Well, usually when I do these episodes and I have on, developers, or I have somebody on that's, anybody that's associated with the industry that I have on, I like to talk about some of the projects or deals that
Sure.
that you've had or you've been a part of. And so from your perspective, when you think back to, some of the deals that you've done, I usually ask it in the way of saying, is there one that stands out in your mind as maybe the most challenging, or most rewarding, or one that was just
Sure.
the best to be a part of? And it's not something where you need to divulge any information that
No.
you can't share, but like, do you have one that stands out in your mind that you could talk about?
Yeah, there's every deal is challenging, but just, how challenging are they going to be throughout this process is kind of like to be determined. So one day you're on top of the world, you're closing the deal. The next day you aren't. The next day you are, and then the next day you aren't. Then you end up closing it, or you terminate and drop the deal. But I'd say, a deal we closed here in January was a pretty interesting deal. It was owned by a man who is a titan of industry in Houston real estate, and him and his partners had owned this piece of property probably for 20, 25 years, and it was really going to be his last deal. He's getting to that age where, he just it was definitely going to be one of his last deals that he did in real estate. So a lot of people coming into the deal. It's an incredible piece of property, but nobody could get it under contract because he's just stubborn and didn't want to work with us on this. Throwing out numbers that were not really realistic for, like, day one option money and things like that were just way out of market. And realistically, what we did is we actually got a Zoom call set up with him and introduced him directly to our clients. And I mean, we didn't do anything crazy special, but just that one-on-one. I don't think anyone else took the time to, because I think his assistant had to set his laptop up and everything for him because he doesn't know how to use Zoom. But that face-to-face, we couldn't go meet him in person. He was, not too close by where we could drive and go meet him. But we ended up, and this is also just preliminary. We didn't have the deal under contract, so going and meeting someone and doing that whole thing, it's not necessarily necessary in most people's minds. But we're like, hey, let's set this meeting up and let's dig in with him and explain who we are, what we're going to do, and our past accomplishments in the business, especially pertaining to the site we're buying from him. And we ended up going through, and there were some challenges along the way. Utilities were a challenge, but just that first part of it, getting it under contract, no one else had been able to jump that hurdle and really get it under contract, just because of the owner. He was stubborn. He didn't want to make it work. He's been doing this for way longer than we have. So, completely understand his reservations. But once he got to know our client, he got more comfortable. And then we were actually able to close the deal. I believe we closed it 2 months early when we got it done. And so everyone was pleased, and ended up being an awesome transaction for everyone involved. So I'd say that was definitely, I mean, not a hairy deal, but the hairy deals, most of them, I have plenty of horror stories of the deals that have terminated all day long. But as far as this deal in particular, it's a pretty fun deal to work on. Very great parties all around, and but it ended up working out great. And I think that part of us talking to him face to face, or at least video, went a long way with him. I don't think anybody else took that effort preliminarily to get it done. So pulled that one off. So very fortunate to get that one done.
Nice, nice. And I suppose that relates back to the whole relationship building side of it, and just trying to
Certainly,
treat people like humans, and have those good conversations with people versus just pushing things onto
without a doubt,
other
and the
parties.
transparency side of it too. I mean, up front, we're like, "Hey, this is what we can do. This is our timeline. This is what we need to accomplish." You lay those things out day one. It goes a long way with a seller because there's a lot of buyers out there who tie land up, try to flip it, try to do all these different things with it, wholesale it, whatever they're trying to do, and they just waste people's time and money. In this business, time is money. The more you hold a property under contract, the less they can't sell it for that time period, so they're handcuffed per se.
Yep.
So giving them a roadmap for what we were going to do day one, like these are the things we're going to accomplish in the first 90 days. The next 30 days we're going to do this, and then we would provide them with the documentation to back up those items we were going and getting. And that's how I try to do it with every client. It varies client to client, but if you can set that expectations up front, people are a lot more likely to work with you because they kind of see the roadmap and they understand the timeline. Because a lot of times people just throw a number on there like, "Hey, I need 240 days to close this deal," but they don't back that up. They just say, "Oh, we need to, do some engineering," or they'll just kind of put some generalization out there. And so when you define those terms and kind of explain it to that seller, they're like, "Hey, that kind of makes sense." And then, more than likely they'll work with you if you can be transparent and explain the process to them.
Yeah, and I feel like that spans across industries too, because I can't tell you how many times that you deal with somebody in a business who has a lack of organization, has a lack of communication around the process or when things are going to happen, and it just puts you as a consumer in a spot where you just don't want to do business with them because the process is just so unclear.
Right.
You're uncertain, and then last minute you're getting a message about, oh, we're changing the date on this, we're changing this, and it's like you wouldn't care if they were more proactive and were kind of
Right.
sharing the process and stuff with you. So I can definitely see how how you're doing that, how that can help a deal and
Oh
keep
yeah.
keep it on track and build that trust in
One
the
day
person
in
involved.
day one, just getting the deal under contract, building that trust with the seller, and then, you know, delivering upon the things you're going to do. I mean, that's huge because they continue to see that. I mean, there are times where we do need more time on deals and we have to go ask for extensions. That's a hard part of the business, is going and asking for these extensions. But if you have, documentation, "Hey, look, we're spending money. We've just gotten this done, this done. Here they are. Like, you can have them." That's what I like to do. Not everyone can do that, but in
Yeah.
most cases, we can share some of these entitlement documentations with the sellers. And sometimes that'll be like, "Okay, so y'all are actually doing something. I'm not just under contract and you're, sitting around not even thinking about my site." Like we closed one yesterday that me and my client, I mean, he put more work into this deal than I think he has to put into any deal in his entire life, and it was incredible to see it come to fruition. But he was so diligent and so on top of it. And we, every quarter, no, not even every quarter, probably every 30, 40 days, we were giving the seller an update with exactly what we did. And the seller was like, "Man, you guys are incredible. I did not expect y'all to be able to." We had to go through a rezone process twice. We had to go to city council twice, in a pretty tough city to get rezoned for the type of use we were getting. And it was pretty incredible to see it come to fruition. And the seller was like, "Look, guys, I thought y'all were going to go in there, get smoked by city council, but we went in there, and I can't take credit. My client went in there and he, made it happen, and it was cool to see. But I think it was a 14 or 15-month process
Wow.
to close that one. That's how they are. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not these quick, it's not this get rich quick
Yeah.
tomorrow type deal. It's definitely a lot of time and effort goes into these deals, and that the whole 14 months the deal could fall apart up until the day until it's funded and closed, the deal could fall out.
Yeah. Well, let's shift into a part of the podcast that I refer to as the lightning round. So, what we do here is I have 5 questions that I put together that I'm going to run by you. Each one will just have you give just a quick response, like a 60
Perfect.
second 60 second type response and your thoughts on these different pieces. So, for the first one, what was the most challenging part of your job when you first got started?
I would say building the confidence to call these owners and building the confidence just to talk to other people in the industry when you don't have a name, you haven't done any deals, just building that confidence up. I mean, it took a while.
Yeah. All right. Second one. What's a commonly overlooked step when doing a real estate deal?
I would say something that's overlooked, people don't talk about, is how you procure the owner's contact information and how you get accurate owner contact information and reach out to people. I think no one talks about that. It's like, hey, you just Google their name or whatever. But in reality, there's a million phone numbers that might come up for them. How do you define and accurately find someone's contact information? I think that's extremely overlooked.
Yeah. All right. For someone who's getting into the real estate industry, specifically looking at land deals, what's the best way to connect with people?
I would say picking up your phone and making a phone call. I mean, it's a little scary at first, but you get in a rhythm of doing it, get a little caffeine in you and start making some phone calls. I love to talk. If you love to talk, it's a good business to be in because you can talk as much as you want to as many people as you want any day, but being diligent and making those calls every day. I mean, that is, I would say, the most important side of this side of the real estate. I mean, really, probably the whole market as a whole. Cold calling is probably the most important thing when you're getting started. Just getting out there and doing it.
Yeah. All right. Number four. What's your favorite part of your job?
I would say my favorite part of my job is probably when you're working with these owners who've owned these properties for a really long time, and they really have never had a financial, they've been financially burdened. Their land, they own the land, but they just have never had the means to really do things and travel and all this stuff. And so seeing some of these owners get financially whole and be able to do these things for their kids, pay for their grandkids college and things like that, I think that's one of my favorite things to see, is when somebody that really deserves it ends up cashing out and obviously getting being able to do things they weren't able to do previously,
Yeah.
just
No,
financially.
that's awesome. All right. Last one. What is the best piece of advice that you've received in your career so far?
Hang around the hoop. So hang around the hoop, wait for the rebound, because if a deal goes out the door and you think you lost it, hang around the hoop. Wait for that rebound, because a lot of big deals that think they're gone. They'll drop out, and if you're keeping up with that agent or whoever it is, the owner, you might be calling them the day it drops, and you might be getting that deal done.
No, it's awesome. I love it. All right. Well, with that said, just kind of wrapping up here for this episode, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or get in touch with Zann if they want to reach out, have any questions or anything for you?
Certainly, yeah, our website, and yeah, probably our website be the best way to reach out. We're all on there. Me, Jason, and the rest of the team are on there. So yeah, our website, Zann.com.
Okay, perfect. And I'll throw that on the show notes page for this episode. For those of you listening in, you can find the website there. And I guess with that said, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. And for those of you listening, if you have not yet left us a rating and review on whatever podcasting platform you're listening on, we'd really appreciate that. I know we have a decent number of people who listen in to each episode every week, but we don't have that many ratings and reviews on whether it's Apple or Spotify. And the reason that's important is because it helps other people find the show. And so the more ratings and reviews, the more likely those platforms are with the algorithm to help boost those up. So if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes to do that, I'd be super grateful. And with that said, we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.